LSU gets pummeled by the MLB Draft, but reinforcements are on the way. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We are here in Atlanta for SEC football media days, but the LSU baseball news cycle just won't stop, and that's a product of the timing. LSU wins the College World Series, the transfer portal opened during that time. The Major League Baseball draft happened on Sunday, Monday, and now as a result of what happened in that draft, Jay Johnson and his staff are having to do work in the portal, and since the draft ended, LSU has added 3 players, including 2 on Tuesday, that are massively significant, and both are a direct result of what happened in the draft over the weekend. So I want to get to who they added and why they added them, what that means for the roster. But I got to start with what happened in the draft so you understand why Jay Johnson needed to go make the decisions and the ads that he did. So recall, if you're an everydayer, shout out. We went through the current LSU roster and what we projected for the draft, and the high school signees and what we projected for the draft. Start with the high school signees. 18 signees. We told you the expectation was that 5 or 6 would end up signing. There were 3 that were absolute, no doubt, slam dunk. We're going to sign. It's over. They're never showing up on campus. Brady Ebel was one of them. He went number 32 to Milwaukee. Jaden Fauske was one of them. He went number 44 to the White Sox. And we told you that Quentin Young was also a no-doubter. He went 54 to the Minnesota Twins. So those 3 we told you were absolutes. They were gone. They were never showing up. All 3 were picked. They're signing. They're going. Remember, any player that goes in the first 10 rounds of the draft, they're gone. There's no decision to make. Because every team, every major league team, has a bonus pool of money they can spend in the first 10 rounds. Now, however they divvy up is up to them. A lot of it is in line with whatever the slot value is for those respective picks. But when they call a player and say, hey, we're thinking of taking you here, would you take X amount of money? That's agreed upon before the pick is announced. So if a player goes in the top 10 rounds, they're gone. So all those players we just mentioned are gone, and that's not a great surprise. Now, the disappointing part is what happened for the rest of the day on Sunday and then on Monday, because a lot of the 50-50 guys went. Briggs McKenzie, a lefty, went in the 4th round, number 127 to Atlanta. Dean Moss went number 67 overall. He's gone. River Hamilton is one that when you look at it, he went in the 11th round, and you'd say, okay, well, that's outside of the top 10 rounds. That's true, but he went to Detroit. And the slot money for that pick is likely going to be, or what I should say is what they're going to pay him is likely over slot, because in the first 10 rounds, they drafted 3 high school players and a college senior. That's a money saver. You draft a college senior because they have no leverage. You can pay them for underslot value, meaning you have more money, which they'll likely invest in River Hamilton. So he is likely gone as well. Landon Hodge went number 106 overall to the White Sox. Miguel Syme, the righty who throws 100, went to the Washington Nationals, number 111 overall. He's gone. So in all, you ended up losing 8. When the hope was 5 or 6, you ended up losing 8 of your high school signees. And then on top of that, there was your current LSU roster. Now, some of that we knew and was a foregone conclusion, guys, that we're going to either go high or we're going to sign. Cade Anderson went 3 overall. We talked about that. Anthony Ianson went 87 overall. there's some we knew. Jared Jones wasn't coming back. He probably went lower than he thought. Jacob Myers went 5 picks after Jones to the Red Sox in the 9th round. He's gone as well. Chase Shores went 47 overall. He's going to get $2.5 million. A lot of that we knew. There's a couple that are interesting. Cade Woods had already entered the transfer portal. He's gone. Connor Ware went in round 15. He'll have a decision to make and likely could return. But Daniel Dickinson also went in the 6th round. He's gone. But the real surprise and the disappointment was Ethan Frey. And this is what sort of spurned what happened on Monday and Tuesday for Jay Johnson. So Frey went in round 3 to the Houston Astros at number 95 overall. The slot value is $803,000. We have been told that the Astros are going to pay Frey around $1 million. So remember, Ethan Frey had a decision to make. And you might say, well, Ethan Frey was great. He's a 300 hitter. He's a lot of power, great body, good athleticism. Yes. But he had not played a position in college. He had not shown the ability to use the glove. So teams that are projecting him have never seen him play defense at the collegiate level. They're just looking at a right-handed DH. There's not a lot of value on that. So the Houston Astros effectively bid against themselves because there was nobody in line to take Ethan Frey in round 3 at 95 overall. So Frey had a decision to make. The Astros call, they offer him $1 million. Do you take that $1 million and begin your pro career, having won a couple of national titles at LSU? Or do you come back to LSU, as we talked about, probably be the day one starting left fielder, an opportunity to play in the field, another year of offensive prowess, and maybe you become a first-round pick in the 2026 draft, increasing your value after you sign for $1 million this year by an additional $3, $4, $5 million, depending on how high you climb. He would have had to bet on himself to come back for another season at LSU. But in the end, Ethan Frey took the money the Astros gave and decided he was going to go pro. So the problem for LSU there is it leaves you with a massive power void. Jared Jones is gone. Now Ethan Frey is gone. So what do you do? That's what Jay Johnson had to step up and answer. And this involved so many moving parts. Not only Frey leaving, but also Chris Stanfield going undrafted and Ashton Larson in the portal with a decision to make. We're going to get to all of that as we continue. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Look, I've been using FanDuel. You can track your favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet, and it's so easy to use. By the way, there's fast payouts, so that makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay, you're watching a bet ride into the 9th inning with the second half of the MLB season getting ready to get underway, FanDuel makes it like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. So, LSU loses 8 of their high school signees, and surprisingly and disappointingly, they end up losing Jared Jones and Ethan Frey, Frey being the surprise, to the MLB Draft. So, this leaves a gigantic power vacuum for LSU going into 2026. Jared Jones hit 22 homers this past year. He's gone. Ethan Frey hit 13 homers. He's gone. Daniel Dickinson hit 12 homers. He's gone. So you look at your team from 2025 and you go, where is the power going to come from? Stephen Milam hit 11 and he returns. And there's other guys up and down this lineup that could help you. Derek Curiel hit 7. Jake Brown hit 8. There are guys, Josh Pearson hit 7. Luis Hernandez hit 9. They're out of eligibility, so they're gone. So there's guys who have a little bit of pop and can run one out of the yard. But when you're looking at the guy in the middle of the lineup that other teams fear, that they have to game plan for or pitch around, that guy isn't in this lineup. And that's the problem Jay Johnson was facing. And I don't mind telling you this, but LSU had put together what I was told is the best NIL/revenue share offer ever for a player in Ethan Frey. It was a mid six figures deal, upper low mid six figures, if that makes sense, type deal, as I was told, for Ethan Frey. So he could have come back, been a big power bat in the lineup, played left field, maybe increased his draft stock. In the end, he elected to take the $1 million and start a pro career, but that leaves LSU in a very precarious spot. So what do? You have Braden Simpson coming in. Now, Braden Simpson is the infielder from High Point who hit 22 homers this past year. And in theory, you would love it if Simpson could come in and be a 20-plus homer guy. But is that realistic going from High Point into the SEC? Maybe not. So Simpson is one of those guys you put an asterisk next to, and maybe he could be that big power bat. But so far, he hasn't shown the ability to be that. The other thing that's maybe a little bit of a benefit to LSU, but complicates things as well, is what happened with Chris Stanfield. Now, throughout this draft process, we told you about Stanfield and drew the parallel to Braswell a year ago. LSU went in the portal a year ago and went and signed Tanner Reeves, thinking Braswell would be gone, Milam would move to short, Tanner Reeves would take one of those infield spots, either second or third. Well, Michael Braswell goes undefeated. He returns to LSU, and Reeves ends up riding the bench. Next year, you could project and see something very similar. We've talked about it plenty. Derek Curiel is going to be your center fielder next year. He's moving from left to center. That's what's going to happen. Jake Brown is going to be your everyday right fielder, which leaves your left field spot open. And the thought was Ethan Frey comes back. He gets the first crack at being your left fielder. It puts him in the field. He gets to show off his glove, gets to play every day. He helps your team, adds a power bat, increases his projection for scouts. Win, 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 win. Well, the complicating factor was going to be, what if Chris Stanfield went undrafted like Braswell did a year ago? Because if Stanfield goes undrafted and wants to return, well, if Curiel's playing center and Brown's playing right and Frey's in left, you don't have a spot for Chris Stanfield. And you can't cut a transfer because you cannot afford to take on the reputation of being someone that cuts transfer players, because if that's the case, then you're not going to continue getting transfer players. So with Frey ultimately agreeing to a pro deal, Stanfield going undrafted feels like a win. That's a guy that is a veteran player, a 3-year starter in the Southeastern Conference, a guy that was fantastic for you offensively this past year. Chris Stanfield was really, really good. He hit 298 on the season. He hit over 300 in conference play. His on-base percentage was .414. So you look at a guy who's a good glove with good speed, who hit for you this year coming back, you would think that's a great thing. Well, not if Curiel's in center and Frey's in left. Because if that's the case, then where do you play Stanfield? And the answer is you don't, because Curiel would be your center fielder and Frey would be your left fielder. So with Frey agreeing to a pro contract, Stanfield in left makes a ton of sense, except that you don't have a power bat. And LSU went back to Ashton Larson, as I was told on Tuesday, and made a pitch to him to see if he would return. but LSU couldn't guarantee playing time. Ultimately, the offer was too good, and so Ashton Larson is headed to the University of Texas. The former LSU Tiger now will be a Texas Longhorn. Now, I'm not trying to sell you on Ashton Larson as a power bat, but Larson is a guy who led you in batting average as a freshman in conference play. As a freshman, had a tremendous second half of the season in conference play a year ago when he was a freshman. It was thought that he would come in and be a starter probably on this team in 2025, but he didn't hit consistently early enough. He rode the bench. Jake Brown, Josh Pearson, emergence, Derek Curiel, and we just didn't see Larson. So Larson hits the portal knowing it's his draft year. He's got to go somewhere where he's going to be in the lineup every single day. And if you've got Derek Curiel, Jake Brown, and Chris Stanfield, then Larson would be in the exact same spot in 2026 as he was in 2025. Literally, I mean, it would be the same exact situation with the three guys ahead of him that are stealing all of his reps. So just like a year ago, we saw Paxton Kling leave LSU to go be in the everyday lineup at Penn State, and he hit over 300, by the way, playing every day. It was a better fit for him. The same is true here for Ashton Larson. He's got to go somewhere in his mind where he's going to be in the lineup 56 times with the opportunity to get 200, 250 at-bats and show what he can do for pro scouts in his draft year. But the detriment for LSU is that you don't get the potential power from Larson. The positive is you do get Stanfield and his 3 years of experience as a starter returning next year. So with all of that said, you still had a giant power void in your lineup. So what do? Well, Jay Johnson went out and did what we have come to expect Jay Johnson to do. On Tuesday, Jay Johnson added not one, but two transfer portal players, both of them sluggers. The first, Zach Yorkie. Now, I understand Zach Yorkie is from Grand Canyon. He is a small school guy, and it is very, very fair to ask, will this translate from Grand Canyon to the SEC? Maybe. But he hit 328 with 32 home runs during his time there at Grand Canyon. 13 of them were in 2025 when he started 48 games. So you're talking about a guy at 6'2", just under 300 pounds, a left-handed power bat who very much could be a guy that factors into the lineup as a DH, as a first baseman immediately, and the big power bat that you are missing. So that was one with Zach York from Grand Canyon. But Jay Johnson was not done. One of the premier programs in college baseball is Oregon State. And Trent Caraway was the next target for LSU, and they landed him. Their second big commitment on Tuesday, Caraway was the MVP of the Corvallis Regional. He's committed to LSU. By the way, in that Corvallis Regional, he hit 5 home runs in the regional alone, 6 home runs in the postseason. That is an Oregon State postseason record. Now, he finished the season, his sophomore year, with just a 268 batting average and a dozen homers. And he did strike out a lot. But you're talking about a guy who has shown the ability to hit for average and the ability to hit for power. So will that translate? That is the big question right now for a guy like Caraway coming in from Oregon State. And you're talking about a guy that is very likely competing now for the third base job. We had assumed that Braden Simpson was going to play third base, the transfer from High Point, who hit 22 homers last year. Well, you bring in a guy like Trent Caraway, he very well could be your plug-and-play third baseman. So it's a guy who you absolutely had to have the power option in your lineup. So you didn't just have a lineup of smallish singles hitters. You have to have a guy in your lineup who strikes fear into your opponents, where they look at the lineup and go, I got to pitch to this guy because Ethan Frey is next, and I don't want to face Ethan Frey with a runner on base. I got to take my chance to get this guy out. That's the approach. That's what happens when you have guys that are table setters and really good players like what we're discussing here. So for Jay Johnson, he adds a couple more transfer portal players, both sluggers, both on Tuesday, a day after we learned both Ethan Frey and Jared Jones would be going pro. Will it be enough? That's what we're going to talk about as we continue, because I do now have an idea of what I think the rotation and the starting lineup will look like for LSU now post-draft and transfer portal. We'll get to that as we wrap up. Locked on LSU, your team every day. I am so thrilled to tell you about our friends over at Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU athletics. Tell you every day, Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. And you know what? I am just a very small part of what Our Lady of the Lake is and has been for our community. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Our Lady of the Lake is a championship health partner of LSU athletics. The same amazing care afforded to the LSU student athletes is afforded to you and me. And you know what? I know this to be an absolute fact. When it comes to healthcare, people want really predominantly two things. They want access and they want convenience. Well, our friends at Our Lady of the Lake provide both. As part of the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System, you can learn more about the many different hospitals and clinics that Our Lady of the Lake has available to you. OLOLRMC.com/LSU. I'll do it again. OLOLRMC.com/LSU is where you can go get more information. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. So I think we should take account of what the transfer portal class and the draft class means for what LSU is going to be in 2026. I should also mention that aside from Caraway and York, who were added on Tuesday, LSU did, in fact, add a pitcher in the transfer portal in D2, Dax Daith from Division II Angelo State. He's also on board with LSU. He's a right-hander who picked the Tigers. He had 98 strikeouts in just 72 and a thirds inning pitch this past year in Division II. He's got a mid-90s fastball. By the way, this is going to be his 7th college season, starting at Houston, then going to Grayson College, Texas Tech, Angelo State, and now LSU. So his 5th school, his 7th year in college, 6'3", 215. It will be Dax Daith's final year of eligibility, but it is worth mentioning it's a very similar situation to Devin Sheeran, a guy who was lightly recruited out of high school, goes the Division II route, goes to Mount St. Mary's, blows up, he gets bigger, the velo ticks up, everybody in the country wants him, and he figures to be a pretty key part of what LSU is going to do in 2026 on the mound, but Dax Daith is another one there. So what does all of this mean for LSU's roster? I still think there are certain givens on this roster. For example, Cade Arambidi is going to be your starting catcher. I do believe firmly that Tanner Reeves is going to be LSU's everyday second baseman. That's something that they intend to be the case. Stephen Milam is going to be your starting shortstop. I believe Derek Curiel is going to be the starting center fielder. Jake Brown will be the starter in right. And I think Chris Stanfield will move to left. And you might say, why would Stanfield move to left? He played center last year. You're right. But Michael Braswell played shortstop as a junior and then moved to third base as a senior because they inserted Stephen Milam at shortstop. And you could see a very similar situation here where you're talking about the young dude oozing potential. He's more likely to get what he wants. So Derek Curiel playing center, Jake Brown playing right, very likely means that incoming back Chris Stanfield will be the left fielder on next year's team. So we'll see how all of that plays out throughout this offseason through fall baseball and then into the start of preseason workouts next year. So Reeves at second, Milam at short. That means first and third are a little up in the air. And left to right in the outfield, I do believe you will see Stanfield, Stanfield, Curiel, and Brown left to right in the outfield, which leaves a couple of spots. What happens at your corner infield spots at first and third? My assumption was that Ethan Frey was likely going to return. That's not going to happen. I also would have assumed that Braden Simpson from High Point with 22 homers a year ago, that was your third baseman, was going to be your starting third baseman. Well, with the addition of Carraway on Tuesday, Carraway is a proven commodity at third base from a Power 5 school in Oregon State. I understand what happened with Oregon State with the Big 12 or the Pac-12 dissolving, but understand that it makes sense for Carraway at third. So Carraway, Simpson, I think, battle at third. First base becomes a battle of some of the guys that we just mentioned here. I think a guy like John Pearson has the opportunity to compete for that slot. I think Zach York, the slugger that they just added, also could be that starting first baseman. Remember Eddie Yaman from Dayton, who LSU added a year ago, took a red shirt this year to preserve that year of eligibility. He's now back and ready to compete. Eddie Yaman could be that first baseman as well. And then there's Seth Dardar. Seth Dardar, the K-State transfer, who told us point blank all he wants to do is hit, but his most comfortable position is second base, but he'll learn anywhere on the field. He could be first, second, or third. Likely couldn't end up slotting in as a DH. And then there's Omar Cerna, the fantastic freshman signee, who is a catcher, first base, DH as well. So you've got options. It's just going to take time for LSU to figure out who slots where. But the big spots, who wins the corner infield jobs, because it feels like everything else is pretty much settled. All right, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.